Cape Cod Broadcasting weaves the listening environments of 99.9 WQRC, Ocean 104.7, WFCC Classical 107.5, Cape Country 104, and CapeCon.com's website experience to reflect the lifestyles of the people who live, work, and play on Cape Cod. We hope that you enjoy this podcast.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. I'm here in the studio with Richard LaTour and Peter Judge, both with the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency. Richard is local coordinator for Region 2, which is southeastern Massachusetts, and Peter Judge is public information officer for the whole state for the agency. The agency's mission is to ensure the state is ready to respond to a whole range of emergencies. Welcome to the show to you both.
Thanks for having us.
Let's start with a more in-depth explanation of what Mema does. Peter?
Well, generally speaking, we're sort of the coordinating agency for the state. We're responsible for, big picture, preparing for, responding to, and recovering from any major emergency or disaster in the state. People don't understand us, think, okay, you're from Mema, you must have like warehouses and warehouses full of stuff. And I like to say on a day-to-day basis, other than our personnel and our vehicles, for the most part, we don't own any assets as an agency, but during a disaster, we own all of the assets because our job is really to coordinate all of the assets that are available within the state and reaching out to the federal government to be able to assist local communities if, in fact, an event exceeds their capabilities.
And this time of year, you're very focused on hurricane preparation. And what goes into that effort?
Well, it's multi-layered, if you will. We just completed very recently a meeting and sort of a testing of the plan of the Cape Cod Emergency Traffic Plan. But in addition to that, there's a lot of preparation. We work very closely with local communities to make sure that they have their ducks in a row, so to speak, to get ready for the hurricane season. We do an awful lot of outreach to communities to basically help people prepare themselves, their families, their businesses for the hurricane season, as we do for many seasons during the course of the year.
And what do you specifically tell people about hurricane season, how they should prepare on an individual basis? What are the big things people should know?
Well, a hurricane potentially is going to put people in the dark for an extended period of time, just assuming, and this is anywhere in the state, not necessarily along the ocean, as we tend to think of hurricanes as being sort of coastal events. But Massachusetts is so small, a hurricane can impact everybody. But we tell people, what are you going to need in case you are isolated in your home for a number of days following a storm and because of debris or whatever, unable to get out. So you don't have power, so you're going to need flashlights, extra batteries, certainly a portable radio to monitor what's happening out there. Supplies of bottled water. We recommend 1 gallon per person per day. In addition, a lot of non-perishable food, first aid kit, and then the particulars that your family might need, whether it's prescriptions, whether it's extra stuff for the kids, infants, pets, etc. So that's I think the first thing out of the box that we really encourage people to do really year-round.
And the Cape has special and unique challenges when it comes to emergencies. Richard, perhaps you can talk a little bit about those. When you cover southeastern Massachusetts, each area perhaps has unique challenges, but the Cape with 2 bridges certainly does. Tell us about that.
Not just 2 bridges, but the Cape is technically an island in itself. So we're surrounded by water on all sides, and we have to worry about the ocean and Mother Nature's fury that it can unleash on the Cape. Certain things like surge inundation zones and things along the coast that can really impact people that live close to the water. And then things also regarding the infrastructure on the Cape itself. There's only 2 lanes on and off the Cape. So there's traffic concerns that can build up while people are trying to get around on the Cape and maybe trying to leave in advance of a storm. And making sure that people pay attention to the signage that's out there and the different threats that could exist on the roadways as well. There's a lot of forests and trees and things like that could impact roadways and people trying to get around. So, but the biggest piece on the Cape, I feel, is the surge and flooding potential when we're talking about hurricanes.
When a big storm is coming, do you typically recommend that people leave the Cape and find someone of a family or friend to stay with off Cape, or what's the typical advice?
From my perspective, the biggest thing is to listen to what the word is. Pay attention to the media, pay attention to what the state's saying, what your local officials are saying, Is there an evacuation that's been placed? Is there some type of a shelter in place that's put out? What are they saying the hazards could be? Is your home impacted or potentially impacted or threatened? The Cape has done an excellent job. Barnstable County, their emergency planning committee, putting a regional shelter system in place. So if there's a need to shelter, that infrastructure is one of the best in the state down here.
Just to add one other thing, for folks who don't know the potential risks that they have, Mema, in conjunction with the Army Corps of Engineers and FEMA, and certainly local officials, particularly up and down the Cape, we've put together on the Mema website sort of a Know Your Zone mapping system in which folks can really look at the potential of storm surge literally down to their street, their house, to see if they are in harm's way. A lot of people aren't, simply because either distance from the water itself or their elevation or the history of the topography there. So I think it's important for people to know ahead of time so you can prepare for that potential outreach from your local officials that might say folks who live in Zone A and maybe describe it a little bit in that community, should consider evacuating at this point because of the potential storm surge. So I think it's a good thing for people to get ahead of well in advance of a storm.
And just to reiterate how someone can know their zone, as you say, how should people do that?
Well, literally go to the MEMA website, which is www.mass.gov/MEMA. Right on the front page, there's a big old box there that can direct them to that section of our website, and then basically locate your community and then really kind of tool your way down to locate your street or your neighborhood to have a feel for what the potential is for a minor storm and or a major storm.
A great tool for people to know about, because I'm sure the reverse is true, where people think that they might be in a certain zone, but they're actually not. And by the same token, they may be actually near a zone and not realize it because they feel like they're not on the water, they're on high ground, but they perhaps are not. Is that true?
Very much so. And another thing to consider is what your personal potential evacuation route is. You might figure, okay, if I want to leave, I can drive down this road, but then they look at the zone and realize the roads that they're potentially going to be driving down are also within that zone, and so potentially could be flooded as well. So you want to consider your own personal evacuation routes, if you will, relative to any sort of storm surge.
Great point. I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. I'm talking with Peter Judge and Richard LaTour of the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency. We talked about hurricanes a bit, but one thing people get very concerned on Cape Cod, and it seems to happen more and more often, winter storms. And how is that different from preparing for hurricanes? Richard?
Yeah, winter storms are a unique animal. Very similar when you're talking about the wind and the potential flooding from the ocean, but the kicker is the cold temperatures. If the power goes out during a hurricane, and people are in their homes without power, they can at least stay warm and stay somewhat comfortable. If it's a winter storm or some type of a nor'easter event that knocks out power and cripples the road network due to the snowfall, there's a huge concern regarding people in their homes with no heat, especially the elderly or special populations that need that heat in order to stay, just because of their vulnerability. So those winter storms are definitely more unique and in many ways more challenging because the ability to get help to those people is impacted when the roads have 2 feet of snow on them, and we saw that during the October snowstorm last year.
And people may not realize there are several shelters on Cape Cod, and there are shelters sort of designated as regional shelters where people can come from other towns, and there are even special shelters designated where people can bring pets, where pets can be accommodated in a certain area. Can you speak a little bit about the shelter system on Cape Cod, Richard?
Yeah, the Barnstable County's sheltering system really is quite immense. There's 6 regional shelters currently throughout the Cape that are placed strategically from the Mid Cape, the Lower Cape, and the Upper Cape, so that people don't have to travel 2.5 hours to get to a shelter, and they're pretty well located. The shelters are all capable of handling many people. There's supplies for people, cots and comfort kits and things for pets as well, so that the pets can be sheltered appropriately. The American Red Cross works very closely as well with Barnstable County to supply additional support and personnel and food. So the shelters are great tools on the Cape. And one point for the public, if they're looking to do a little bit of planning ahead of time, the Barnstable County's Emergency Planning Committee's webpage has an interactive map that deals with sheltering in particular, as well as several other Cape Cod preparedness tips. And their website is www.bcrepc.org.
So people can look there and find out which shelter is perhaps most convenient to them. Now, you've recently updated the Mema's Cape Cod traffic plan, and our station, WQRC, has a role in the plan letting the public know what is happening. What does the average Cape Codder need to know about the Cape Cod traffic plan? Richard?
Yeah, so again, it's knowing where to look both in advance and during a storm as well. The Cape Cod traffic plan, first and foremost, is not by any means, an evacuation plan. It's not designed to evacuate the Cape and get everyone over the bridges and make the place empty. Rather, it's really a traffic management plan. It's designed to get people over the bridges that wish to leave as efficiently as possible. Really designed around those peak tourist seasons when tourists are trying to leave in large numbers and clogging the arteries that leave the Cape, and helping to streamline that traffic to get it over the bridge as fast as possible.
So typically we might be talking about a hurricane preparedness in that case rather than a winter storm and when there are fewer tourists. Is that right?
Exactly. Those Labor Day weekend hurricanes or those third weekends in August when the rental exchanges are occurring, those are those weekends that the plan really is built for.
How has it worked out when you've actually had to go to this plan, if ever?
Yeah, so we've fortunately never had to fully activate the plan, and I'll explain that a little bit. So the plan is designed to be built up in stages. There's a total of 5 phases in the plan, and the furthest that we've gotten is to phase 3. What that means from a 10,000-foot level is that everything's in place. The shelter of last resort is ready to be opened. The state police, Mass DOT, and all of our other partners are in position ready to go if the trigger is pulled, so to say. Fortunately, and this is actually great news, is that the warning information that we've put out in advance of a storm over the years, the public has listened to, and they've acted early enough to prevent traffic issues. So fortunately, there has not been a need for traffic management in recent storms, only because there has been no traffic. So that's been a great success as far as the plan, and that's one of the biggest pieces, if you will, is making sure the public knows what's going on in advance of a storm. So that's about as far as we've gotten. Hurricane Earl, Irene, Sandy, we all got to that phase 3 point, but never had to actually implement traffic control measures and things like that.
Now, when it comes to emergencies, it seems that seniors may have special things they want to think about, things they should know, and ways to plan. Peter, perhaps you can address that.
Well, I think as a senior, certainly, ultimately they've got many of the same needs everyone else has. But certainly seniors that need medications, certainly I guess one of the good things about hurricanes is we get warning. We watch it coming up the coast, so we know we've got a little lead time, if you will. So that's why we recommend folks who have particular medications, they see a storm coming, want to make sure that they've got enough on hand for an extended period of time. Certainly, you want to make sure you have batteries and backup equipment, if you will, for your own specific equipment. You may want to reach out to your any caregivers you might have, or any special appointments you may have, to reach out to folks to let them know where you are, what your plans are going to be, and maybe how you can rejoin after the storm has sort of passed, if you will. So there are certainly special needs for the elderly, for seniors. As we may mention earlier, the various shelters that are in place certainly bear that in mind as well. There are special accommodations for folks who maybe have some special needs along those lines.
Do you give any special advice to people about generators? Because we do have a lot of power outages on the Cape, and there's always a lot of talk each year, and there can be people who think they have a generator, they think they're all set. When it comes time to fire it up, it doesn't work. Things like that happen. What are your thoughts on that?
They're great if you know what you're doing. And the worst thing is if you don't, because there's potential not only for you to harm yourself and your family, but literally to take the power out in your neighborhood if it's set up wrong. So certainly if you do get a generator, get someone who knows what they're doing to help you set it up. Certainly you want to have it set up in your yard, away from a window, away from your home, so if there are any fumes, they're not coming into the house. But as I said, it's a great tool. Certainly it'll help keep the lights on, but only if you know how to work them safely.
Now, Mema, your agency has a new app, actually, to let people know in Massachusetts about emergencies. Tell us about this app and how people can get it.
Sure. We recommend as many ways for people to find out information as possible. So in that vein, we've kind of developed our own emergency warning app, if you will, for cell phones, for smartphones. And it's called Massachusetts Alerts. And the beauty of that is almost twofold. What makes it different from other applications is, it enables us to geofence. It's a fancy word for basically draw a map or a fence around a specific area so that the message we're sending out are only received by phones in that area. So you're not being bothered by information about something out in western Massachusetts if you're down in the Cape. Inversely, if you're in a community that has an impact, is going to be impacted, we can touch base with you right there. And also because although it's limited to 180 characters, it has a more information button, if you will. So we can attach maps, videos, pictures, more extensive language, press releases, etc. So really, it's a great tool for people. It's free. You can get it, in your app stores as you normally would for any other app. But it's something that is really catching on and is really very, very helpful for any type of event. We utilize them during the Boston Marathon. After the fact, we've utilized them during weather events, during Amber Alerts. So it's multifaceted.
It's a great thing for people to be left with this session about Mema, that they can get the app, and I guess as long as the electricity works, they can charge their phone and have that right on their phone and be able to follow storms before they get here and know what the planning stages are. Unfortunately, we're out of time now. Thank you both for coming in.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for having us.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal.
This podcast is a presentation of Cape Cod Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content. Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit us at capecodbroadcasting.com.